Andy Purrawal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Macklin over Zoom. Matt, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Not bad at all, mate. Not bad at all.
It's good to hear. Now, obviously, we're in the midst of fight camp. We're getting ready for the third week this coming weekend, tomorrow night. We see Cash-Welborn and Felix Cash go at it straight into it. Matt, because I know you're a busy man. What should we expect from tomorrow night? Because Eddie thinks that tomorrow will deliver the best fight camp out of a lot.
Yeah, I think there's some good. I think there's less bigger names possibly on this card, but possibly better matchups. Felix Cash-Welborn could be a great fight. I think it just depends on what ambition Cash-Welborn has left. He's 34 years old. He's been professional 15 years. He's achieved more sort of in the latter part of his career than probably he thought he was going to, earlier on. Became British middleweight champion, fought for a world title as well, down at super welterweight against Jarrett Hurt. So, he's had a really good run lately. Maybe not the last couple of years. He's been inactive, and he's lost to, been stopped, James Metcalf, and of course Jarrett Hurt was said. But he's the latter part of his career, he came on. He lost some early fights early on in his career, which probably didn't do him justice. So I think if this fight had happened a fight sooner for Felix Cash, it would have been more interesting but I think that tough fight he had with Jack Cullen, it gave him that bit of a gut test. He went through situations in that fight that will hold him in good stead for this fight. So I think that it's good matchmaking. I think Welborn will definitely come and have a go. He always does. But I think at this stage in his career, he probably doesn't have the hunger or the ambition for when the going gets tough. I think that Felix Cash is undefeated, he's fresh, and he's a good boxer as well, Cash. I like him. I like the look of him. And I think this is a good fight for him, Welborn. I think it's a good match. But I think maybe if this had happened a couple of fights ago, it might have been a bit too soon for him. But I think the timing of the fight is good, and I think it suits Felix Cash.
Just to move away from that one and onto kind of the rest of the card, DONovan ERICKSON certainly seems to have gone into there with a lot of confidence, a lot of people talking about him. What should we expect from Zalfa, though, in his first fight under Matchroom?
Well, this is probably one of the more intriguing matchups of the whole fight camp series because, you've got, in Eric Donovan, you've got someone who went away from the sport, retired from amateur boxing, having achieved so much, very long, extensive, decorated amateur career, lots of internationals, tournaments, won everything, national titles, a lot. Boxing the World Series of Boxing too. Then went away from the sport for a few years, but has come back as a professional. He's undefeated. He's kicking on a bit, but he doesn't have miles on the clock. He's fresh in terms of miles on the clock. He might be getting on in age, but certainly not in terms of mileage. So it's interesting. I think early on, Eric Donovan will frustrate and outfiddle Zalfa Barrett, make him guess a little bit. But it'd be interesting to see how Barrett can put the heat on Eric Donovan. It's his matchroom debut. He's is he 23-1 now, 24-1, something like that. So he's seasoned. He's been around a while now, and he's had that loss, which was a southpaw, which is interesting. His only loss came against the southpaw, so that is an interesting factor with Donovan being a southpaw and a slick southpaw. So there's a few interesting little question marks going into this fight, but I think you have to make Barrett the favourite. But I don't sleep on Donovan. If Barrett isn't up for this, which I'd be surprised if he isn't, but if he isn't, then Eric Donovan could pull off the upset.
Courtenay Ball as well. Shannon Courtenay, she was a favourite going into it, and she will be tomorrow night. But we've certainly seen the betting odds kind of shorten on Rachel Ball tomorrow night. What should we be expecting there about?
Yeah, it's a funny one, really, that Courtenay's been made the favourite. I think that's probably because of her profile, because I don't think you could make a favourite going on their career so far. I mean, even though, she's 5-0 and I think Rachel Ball's 5-1, there's very little between them in terms of experience as professionals. But, if you look at Ball's record a little closer, her own loss came in Norway against Norway's #1 fighter, and it was a majority decision. The one judge had it a draw. So it was obviously a close, competitive enough fight. Very tall, very rangy. Came from, I think, a kickboxing background. So she's, she'll be fit and durable and tough. She's used to combat sport. And she's been 10 rounds. She's been 8 rounds. And, Shannon Courtney's only been into the 5th round once. So the experience really is with Rachel Ball. And, I think really she's probably the favourite going into the fight. But, of course, Shannon Courtney's got a lot of personality. She's boxed on Sky TV. Her profile is bigger. So I think that's probably why she has been made the favourite.
I just want to come away from this coming weekend, then, and move back to last weekend. We saw a brilliant headline fight between Terry Harper and Tasha Jonas. Just break down for me that kind of that card. And again, how close a fight was that in your eyes?
Look, it was a very close fight. I had it 96-94 for Jonas. I preferred her cleaner punching. I think I preferred her shot selection. I gave her the last round. Again, a lot of people gave Harper that round, and I can understand why they did, because she was the one taking the fight. She was forcing the pace. She was aggressive, and she landed some great stuff, don't get me wrong, as well. But I thought the better shots in the last round that came from Natasha Jonas. I thought her inside work was very good. She stayed composed. The defense was very good. She took a lot of the shots on the arms and gloves, and she'd fire back with 2 body shots and then finish the combination with an uppercut, which was quite often snapping the head back on Harper. And I just liked that cleaner, classier, more composed work. It was neater. But look, I understand if someone went with Harper in the last round, because she did force the pace and she was forcing the action. And I think she tried to overwhelm Natasha Jonas in the last round with her youth and with her tenacity. But like I say, I thought that Natasha stayed composed and landed the better shots in that last round. But if you did give the last round, if I had given the last round to Harper, like a lot of people did, then I would have had it a draw. So it was a close fight. I thought Jonas did enough, but certainly had no arguments with the draw, because it was a very close, hard-fought, competitive fight and a great fight.
Now, I know into the build-up to that, I think the easiest way to put it, you may not have been Joe Gallagher's favourite person into the build-up of the Harper-Jonas fight. He certainly seemed to think that maybe he was a little harsh on Tasha with regards to what you're saying about Terry being the favourite and what have you. Just what did you make of what Joe was saying during the build-up, and did you speak to him at all after or around it?
Joe's Joe. Do you know what I mean? Joe's an intense personality, and he's going to war and he's batting for his fighter. So I get it, but ultimately my job isn't to align with anyone. My job's just to call the fight as I see it and to predict it from what I can see. Now, I'm not in the gym day in, day out with Natasha Jonas. I'm not watching how she's performing in the gym. Is she better than she's ever looked? I'm just looking at her track record, and on her track record, going into the fight, her form and Terry Harper's form, there was no comparison. Terry Harper had massive momentum coming into the fight. She was 23 years old. She was world champion in her last fight. She was undefeated. Natasha Jonas had a bad defeat a while back, had a bit of time away from boxing, came back, has had a few wins, but nothing to write home about. Now, and the other thing, had I gone up to Manchester and watched Natasha Jonas, I may well have been impressed. I may well have had more of an insight. But even at that, it still would be sparring. It's the gym. It's not the current on the night in the fights going into the fight. So, like I say, on current form, on the surface, looking at it all, Terry Harper was a big, big favourite. And I made her a big favourite, and rightly so. Maybe I wrote Tasha off a little bit. But when you're in that situation, you're going to feel like you got wrote off and you were written off. But there was nothing in her current form that suggested she had that performance in her. Hats off to her. She shocked everyone, me more than anyone. And I was, like I say, I wasn't trying to cling to what I predicted. I called the fight as a scene, and I actually had a winning, in a very close fight. So, look, Joe's Joe. I know Joe inside out, upside down. He's an intense personality, but that makes him who he is as well. He's a good coach. I thought his tactics were spot on. I thought he was great in the corner, and Natasha executed the game plan and stuck to it. So, hats off to both of them.
Moving right from that one, then on to Fowler Harper. Anthony with a brilliant performance. Just spoke to Adam Smith, and I said to him his jab was superb throughout. Surprised, although, that maybe the fight wasn't stopped by Adam's corner all a little earlier.
Yeah, very surprised. I thought, it was look, it was always a hard fight for Harper because he didn't have that power, and really he had to try and be busy and be in and out and maybe keep feinting and offsetting and changing angles. But he stood in front of Fowler too long, or Fowler made him stand in front and cut the ring off, and just buried him with that ramrod jab. His jab was a weapon. It wasn't a rangefinder. It wasn't scoring points. It was busting him up, and off that jab came the right hand and the body shots and everything. So it was a good, solid, really good, strong performance from Anthony Fowler. I think Adam Harper showed courage and toughness, but ultimately the last thing a brave fighter needs is a brave cornerman, and he hadn't won a round. He got badly hurt in the fourth round. You could say he was saved by the bell, really. And why would you leave him in there to take a sustained beating? He hasn't got this one-punch power that can turn it around. He's not a puncher. So he hasn't outboxed him for any part of any round of this fight. He's just getting beaten up. The bell has saved him here. This is a perfect time to say, that'll do. But, he went on for 2.5 rounds. Too long for me. I thought he should have been. I thought that when the bell saved at the end of the fourth, that was a perfect time for the corner to just pull him out.
Moving away from last week as well, Matt, and just a couple of things in the boxing world to get your thoughts on. Obviously, I think it was last week we saw Frank Warren reach out to Eddie, Matchroom Skyback, trying to make some cross-stable fights. What did you make of that, Matt? Was you surprised when you saw it?
Not really. Frank's crafty, isn't he? Frank's very innovative, and he's always coming up with some good ideas. So no, it doesn't surprise me. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. Are there some fights on there that could happen? Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's going to be a card or a series of cards where it's Matchroom versus Queensbury. I'd be surprised if that happened. But I think there's definitely maybe a couple of fights that could perhaps get made.
Just quickly touch on as well, we saw the WBC reiterate the other day that DILLIAN White will face the winner of Wilder Fury 3. Just again, your thoughts on it all, Matt. Do you feel that's the right move, or do you feel that we should see Fury AJ kind of trump the mandatory?
Quite often a bit of unification can trump a mandatory. The mandatories will generally step aside. That said, DILLIAN has been waiting so long that he's been waiting so long for his shot that it's almost like, you're going to put it back again, really. He kind of deserves his shot. But I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it, really. Look, when you get... It's a tough one, really, because DILLIAN, his shot is so overdue. But really, we do want to see Joshua Fury at all costs. We want that. The first, Fury Wilder 3 has to happen because it's already been pre-contracted, but we don't want anything else coming in and putting it back again. So, you'd like to think that a deal can be done for DILLIAN to step aside so that all belts are on the line and that he definitely fights the winner next. But, I suppose DILLIAN's at this point at the end of his tether with it all, and he just might not want to do that, which is also understandable.
Final thing, Matt, it seems to be that we're all steam ahead for a Garcia-Campbell fight. Eddie coming out yesterday saying that the deal seems to be likely to be agreed now. What are your thoughts on it, Matt? What do you make of that fight?
It's an intriguing fight because it'll tell us how good Garcia is. No doubt. He's got talent. He's got speed. He's got self-belief. He's got youth. Campbell, serious operator. I just really hope that Campbell hasn't missed the boat. And I don't think he has, but I just really hope he hasn't because, he could have got the decision against Linares. He gave Lomachenko a really good fight. All right, maybe not on the scorecards. He lost most of the rounds, but let me tell you, he made Lomachenko think, adjust, adapt. He gave him a tough fight. Lomachenko went to bed that night and slept. Believe me, he knew he was in a fight, even though he was very dominant on the cards. And they're two of the, two top draw fighters. So Luke Campbell is a world-class fighter, without a doubt. I really hope that he wins a world title before he retires, and that he doesn't go down as one of those great fighters that didn't win a world title. You know, Garcia certainly is very good. How good, I'm not sure yet.
Matt, we will leave that there, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. As always, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Cheers.